Welcome, Dr. James Beckett, Sports Card Insights, here with Sooz Lulgjuraj, formerly actually of Beckett Media, formerly of Topps, and now kind of on her own with respect to the hobby. But she has CardChat, which I'm enjoying subscribing to that. As you know, I love to subscribe to everything, but all things in the hobby are not created equal. And this is one of the good ones. Very, very, very well done, Sooz. Before we get to Sooz's hobby journey and story, which will be very interesting, thanks sponsors, Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, as well as Huggins and Scott Auctions and Heritage Auctions. Sooz, you've worked for 2 out of those 7, and that's some measure of distinction, and you've lived to tell about it. So tell us about your hobby journey and leading up to that, because I think Beckett Media was your first formal hobby job. But again, welcome to the show. And I've been wanting to do this, and you've, I don't know that you've eluded because I think you've been really busy, but I've been busy too, and so glad we're sitting down to talk today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm excited for this because, yes, Beckett Media was my first formal job, and like it's cool to sit down and talk to the guy whose company's name was on my paychecks. So that was kind of cool. But like a lot of other collectors, I got my start in the hobby as a kid. My brother and my cousin, I'd watch them trading their cards, and I'd want my own, but they're like, no, these are our cards. And I'm like, fine. So, my mom would send me to the corner store, and this is about 10, 11 years old. Go to the corner store to buy some milk, and I would take the extra change, buy a couple packs of cards. And you could do that back then. You can't really do that anymore, but you could do that back then. And that's how I got my start with collecting my own cards. And as I got older and I got my own part-time job, now we're talking 96, 97, 98. I'm buying cards off of eBay, writing checks, literally writing check after check after check. So, and sending them, taking 2-3 weeks, to even get cards, which now if that happened, people are going crazy. But that was the norm back then because the check has to clear and then they have to send the cards, and it was a whole big thing. So that's really what I was buying, Derek Jeter lots at the time, because that was even back then, that was always the focus of my collection, because I was, 16 years old in 1996 and Yankees win the World Series, Derek Jeter's Rookie of the Year. How can I not fall in love with a guy? That just became my favorite player right away. And then just to fast forward, around 2003, 2002 maybe, or 4, somewhere in that area, my friend Marie and I created a blog because I took what I know, and that is writing. I was a sports journalist at the time, working for a newspaper. So I took what I know, writing, and my love of cards, and we turned it into a blog, A Cardboard Problem. And it became pretty popular, admittedly, because here were 2 women who were collecting trading cards and talking the norm, so to speak. And even now it's more a male-dominated hobby than female, but it became pretty popular very quickly. And through that, I got to know so many people within the hobby, including Chris Olds, who worked at Beckett at the time. And he was like, hey, do you want to run some freelance for Beckett? We could use some extra help. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds wonderful. To me, it was not that, I'm playing it nonchalant, but at the time, I'm like, this is amazing. I get a chance to write about my hobby and get paid for it. How cool.
Well, you had a sports writing job at the same time, right?
I was a sports journalist.
So you had a job, and this was for the magazine or for the website or for all the above?
Both. So it was a couple of articles that would appear on the site, but then they use them for print as well. And that's cool. And I think, you see your name in print, and it's always so cool. So when I got those magazines, I was like a little kid, Yeah. So then through working at Beckett, a job opening came, and I became the basketball, football, and hockey editor for those 3 magazines. And I did that for 2 years. And, lucky enough through that job, I met so many industry people, and I saw a job opening at Topps, and I lived in New York. I was working remotely and reached out to people I knew at Topps, and they invited me in for an interview. And a week later, I got offered the job. So I became a sports editor at Topps for my first job there. And it was, you got to pick, essentially, there's a lot more to it, but I always say, you got to pick the pictures that went on the cards. That was the crux of the job. And that to me, I'm like this, a grown adult. I'm like a little kid walking into this place. And how cool was it that I got to pick the pictures that went on the front of these cards? So
you're just starting in your career, and you've worked for, you've done the sports journalism stuff, but now you've worked for 2, I shouldn't say, at least one iconic company, and certainly the leading price guide company. But that must have been really exciting.
It was.
For getting paid to do something you love. And I know when we were trying to hire people, we were always looking for people who had the passion, but you have that extra element, and that's called skill. We had a lot of people that wanted to come work for us because they had the passion, but they didn't always have the skill. And so I've seen your writing. You're an excellent writer. So the passion and the skill is a great combination. I'm sure Tops recognize that. But are you more? I thought you were more literary than artistic. I mean, when so you're not writing card backs, you're picking the photos.
Yeah.
Is that something that's another one of your skills?
Well, as a journalist, as something, you worked with images as well. Like what kind of art would go on the page with your article? So I was a sports writer for 15 years. Like I was in the newspaper industry for 15 years. So I wasn't like hey, just did this for a little while. And then especially while working at Beckett, as the editor, now you're in it. Like you're picking what image, like when you're like at a newspaper, you kind of have like some involvement and you're looking at it, but you're not the editor. You're not the final person. At the magazine, like you're that person. So you have to make sure like your images are complementing what's going on with your article. So when it came to the time of Tom, so now to pick the images, like that was cool too. Because like, what is going to make this card look the best? And, I always said, and I did Stadium Club for a couple of years, and that was my favorite thing to do with Stadium Club. And I always said, like, and I'm sitting there scrolling through Getty Images, and that's where they got the pictures. I looked for pictures that gave me an emotional reaction, because if it made me like, this is cool, or this is crazy, or I wanted to have some sort of reaction to it because I knew somebody else would feel the same way about it.
Well, I don't know that collectors understand this, but you certainly do from being on both sides of the table, is that each brand that the company has, not just Topps, kind of is known for photography or for some brand distinction. And that's kind of Stadium Club's, right?
Yeah, Stadium Club is photography, and that's what was exciting about it, is that it gave you because like you said, there's some cards don't require a lot of sort of like artistic license to it. Like it needs to be a headshot, it needs to be this. Where Stadium Club, it was like a canvas. You were given free reign to pick the images that you wanted, and that was really exciting to have that type of sort of influence on the product.
But not to do something basic, but to do something that stood out. So I imagine that'd be a lot of fun. I mean, some of the people, I think a lot of the listeners don't understand everything that goes into making up a card. They think it must be pretty simple, but I think there's a lot more steps and actually a lot of things that can go wrong. But so you really enjoyed your days at Topps, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was a dream. Like you grow up being a collector and you can't ever imagine like, cool, I'm going to go, and that card I collected 20 years ago, I'm now going to be that person where I'm making a card and collectors are collecting that card. Like that to me is pretty awesome. Was
going to the card shows or like the National, was that one of the perks of the jobs, or was that one of the things you just had to do, whether it was Beckett Media or Topps? Were those really exciting times for you, or you just got it out? You seem to be having a good time the time I saw you there.
I love the National. That's like, this is the week too. Like, I don't know.
all of our people, Sooz, are there.
Yeah. And the best part of the National, I love cards, obviously, but the best part of the National is seeing the people that maybe you only get to see one time a year. So here are people you may talk to in email or text messages or social media, but to sit down and actually get to talk to them face to face, have dinner with them, have like real conversations, and just like, really connect with people. That's what the National is really about. So while when I was at Topps or Beckett and I'm working, I still had those moments. I would, if I wasn't, and this year I'm not working for either, had there not been a pandemic, I would have gone to the National because that's where I want to be.
Right. Were you at either place? I mean, are you a traditional journalist in the sense that, because I regard blogging as being pretty close to traditional journalism, just in a digital form, but social media seems to be so highly interactive and non-literary, but I mean, there's no punctuation, there's no capitalization, there's a lot of informality. Are you, how big are you with social media? I think I'm pretty sure I'm not real big on that, but I think you got pretty good following, right?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Twitter for like card stuff. I have a little Instagram for cards, but I don't really use it a lot. Twitter is my big thing. I like Twitter because I think it's a good place to find news and interact with people. I really enjoy it a lot, and I don't tend to. I'm trying, like, I post opinions on there, but I try to also keep it fair in that sense. So like, I still use social media in a way that I'm very. I'm mindful of what I'm posting when I post on social media.
I've had people say they want to encourage me to do more social media. And I think I would if I was promoting something besides my podcast, which is kind of my daily social media. But for you, what are some of your goals with Twitter? Just to keep up with what's going on? Or are you in any sense funneling them to your CardChat or any other kinds of things? Or what are your objectives there? I mean, what?
Yeah. I think the first is connecting with people, with like-minded people, because, collecting is a very unique hobby. And while we're seeing a lot more people in it right now, for years, I think it was harder to find people. And before social media, blogs was the way to find those connections. So the first thing is to find people who are into collecting, because I enjoy the conversations. I enjoy seeing other people's collections. Then I also use it to get news. Like today, I'm learning about different things happening in baseball this morning, and I got them all off of Twitter. Yeah. And then, I do funnel whenever I have something, if it's a new blog post or promoting my newsletter. But that tends to be maybe 10% of what I'm posting. The other stuff is really just, talking about cards and connecting with people is probably the bulk of it.
So it's 90% fun and 10% chore?
It's all fun.
100% fun.
It's all fun, yeah.
Well, that's said from a wordsmith who has words come out sounding good and makes a living off that. I'm a little bit more of a numbers guy, but I like words too. So tell us about CardChat. That's fairly recent, right?
Yeah, so CardChat actually started as just a Twitter chat, which is every once a week I would post 6 questions on Twitter in an hour, and people then would respond with different things. And it could be about any topic. And about 2 months ago, I decided, I wanted to create a newsletter for trading cards, because I don't think that there's a lot of that out there right now. And I thought that there was, a place where I could do something, because one, as we said, I love words, I love to write. And, it would give me a chance to connect with people in another way as well. So because I had CardChat, and that was kind of I had the Twitter chat for about 10 years at this point, I thought it was just a really good name to just keep it with it, because it was sort of on brand for me. So we go back to now what I do with my real life, in my normal life, is marketing. So I was that's pretty on brand to use the CardChat name. So we stuck with it. And my husband, Dan, also writes for it as well, because, he is also a card collector. And so it really gives us both, he's a writer as well and an editor. So we kind of have these skills that we use that we thought we can share with people, with other collectors.
I am shocked when I visited with Jeremy Lee, and he had the idea to do a show on YouTube, and he wanted to call it Sports Cards Live, and to his amazement and mine too, that name had not been taken. And now I'm talking to you, and CardChat, which is brilliantly succinct, pithy, terse, whatever you want to say, and to the point, and it's not taken. So that's very cool. So I think it's aptly named. You're doing a great job. So how can people follow you? Or, I'm just Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insights and drjamesbeckett@gmail.com. Those are my 2 possibilities. I'm not giving out my phone at this time. But how do you want people to follow you or reach you, Susan?
Yeah. So they can find me on Twitter. Like I said, Twitter is my biggest platform that I use, and that's @Yanxchick, YANXCHICK, because I thought that was really cool to go with an X as opposed to that KS. Which, not that anybody cares, it actually was my second ever AOL screen name. So I just stuck with it for now 20 years. And then for the newsletter, they can sign up at cardchat.substack.com. That's Substack is the newsletter platform. So it's cardchat.substack.com.
That's, like I said, I highly recommend it. I am a subscriber. I went to where Sooz said to go, and I'm looking forward to I guess they're once a week, right?
Yeah, once a week they come out.
Well, I will. And they're pushed to me. I'm kind of more of a push guy, where you send it to me and then I don't have to think about it. So I'm old school, I suppose. But Sooz, you're doing great. I'm glad you had a stint at Beckett Media and enlightened them for a while at Tops. And I wish you well in your current endeavors. We're out of time, folks. Listeners, another excellent guest today. And I'll be back tomorrow again with somebody else, not as literary, perhaps. So again, Sooz, thanks. Thanks, listeners. Be back tomorrow.